Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited you're joining us today. Today, we're having a very special interview. Many of you know my story. Years ago, my son was diagnosed with severe nonverbal autism. And like so many parents, I was told there wasn't much that we could do except manage symptoms and to lower our expectations. Then I discovered the work of today's guest. Her research and the GAPS Nutritional Protocol completely changed the direction of our lives. It not only transformed my son's health, but it ultimately inspired the work I now do, helping families all over the world. Today's guest is Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride. Dr. Natasha is a neurologist, neurosurgeon, nutritionist, best-selling author, and the creator of the Gut and Psychology Syndrome, or GAPS Nutritional Protocol. For more than a few decades, she has helped thousands of people around the world better understand the relationship between the gut, brain, immune system, and overall health. Dr. Natasha, thank you so much for joining me today. It is truly an honor to have you here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I'd love to begin at the beginning because I don't think everybody knows the story behind GAPS. Can you tell us about your son, your family's journey, and how that experience ultimately led you to create the GAPS Nutritional Protocol?
It's a very similar story to yours, Lindsay, which is repeated many times by thousands of families around the world. He had a very severe non-verbal autism, which was diagnosed at the age of 3, and that threw me into a very steep learning curve. I had my cultural background because I was a Soviet doctor. I was trained in the Soviet Union, which was a very different medicine. And I already knew about gut flora. I knew about digestive health. And I came from a traditional society. I knew how to cook, and I understood the value of natural foods which are cooked at home. So then I read books and I've met people and I went to conferences. The result of it was the development of the GAPS Nutritional Protocol. My son has recovered from autism. He's now an adult in his 30s. He's leading a normal life. Like any adult, he's busy with his own life. And in 2004, I've written my first book, Gut and Psychology Syndrome, where I explained to the world what causes autism. Because my son is my teacher, children come to us as teachers. We adults teach them mundane things, how to dress, how to drive a car, how to talk, not even how to talk, but how to live in this society. But children teach us profound spiritual truths. They teach us how this universe functions, how the whole world functions, and how we've been designed. So my son has been my teacher all of my life. He's still my teacher to a degree. And through his illness, through his suffering, through his symptoms, he basically made me understand what causes autism. So I've explained it in the yellow book, in the gut and psychology book at that time. And when I've written that book, I knew instinctively that there is no point to give this information to my colleagues, to other medical doctors, to the mainstream medical doctors. I knew that they will just kill it in its infancy. So I gave this information to people who needed it the most. I gave it to the mothers of autistic children, like you. And since then, it's these mothers and fathers, the parents of autistic children and hyperactive children and children with other learning disabilities, they made this knowledge a global phenomenon. They carried it all over the world, and they helped their own children and then many, many other families and many, many other people. This book now has been translated into 28 languages. We have more translations coming. And millions of people around the world are using this protocol. We don't even know, nobody's counting, nobody's doing an audit. How many people are using this protocol all over the world for healing? And as I was I started working with autism, but then working with being a Soviet doctor, I had to collect health history from the whole family. And very quickly, I've accumulated a large amount of data to show me that the whole family needs help. that the whole family is suffering from something. And then through my experience, through the clinical experience, I've realized that what caused autism in this child causes a plethora of illnesses in the whole family. Other children may not be autistic, but they may have eczema, asthma, digestive problems. They might be clingy. They might not do well at school. Their social skills might not be so good in these children. The parents might have chronic fatigue syndrome. They might have migraines. They might have digestive problems, autoimmune illnesses, allergies. The grandparents, the whole family. And that completed the story. That completed the picture. And I've realized that what causes autism causes every chronic disease in humanity. Every chronic disease is caused by the same thing in humanity. And that led to writing the second GAPS book, Gut and Physiology Syndrome. That's the blue book. You know, the first book, the yellow book, focused on the brain. The second blue book focuses on the rest of the body. So the two books combine, the two books complement each other, covering the whole spectrum of mental and physical illnesses in people. And since proposing what actually causes every chronic disease in 2004, now science has confirmed it many times, because the Western scientists suddenly got interested in the fact that we have microbes in our digestive system. And then they've discovered that not only in the digestive system we have microbes everywhere in the human body, in the blood, in the heart, in the lungs, in the brain, in the joints, in the muscles, in the bones, everywhere. There are microbial communities. And then the scientists have discovered that 90% of all cells in the human body are microbes. That human body is a microbial community. You're only 10% of you is human. The rest is microbial. So people who are afraid of microbes are afraid of themselves, because your body is a microbial community. And if that microbial community is healthy, then it is harmonious, it is balanced. Because living with microbes is only possible through balance and harmony. You cannot get rid of them. You cannot destroy them. They are indestructible. They're so well adapted, much better adapted than we are. And the planet belongs to them. So the only way to live with them is to have that microbial community in harmony. Unfortunately, human beings are very good at creating disharmony in nature, at breaking harmony, breaking balance. And that's what's happening in our environment and inside us too. Because we human beings are part of our environment. We cannot be separated from our environment. We cannot be separated from nature, from our whole planet, from everything that's going on to our oceans and rivers and our soil and our deserts and the animals and birds and microbes and everything else. And as humanity started destroying nature and destroying the planet like this, then humanity started destroying itself, because you cannot be healthy if your environment is unhealthy. So that's how GAPS has become a global phenomenon, and that's how it explained the cause of every disease. Keep getting this. Every disease. So your body is a microbial community. And because humanity, technocratic humanity, is very good at destroying that harmony, majority of people now, particularly in the Western world, have chaos in their microbial community. The balance is broken, the harmony is broken, and that always leads to disease. Because what is good health? Good health is harmony, where you have a big orchestra with a good conductor, and every instrument plays at the right moment, at the right tone, correctly. And as a result, you have a beautiful, harmonious symphony. But if, half of the instruments are killed, other half of the instruments are not working, the conductor's ill or maybe missing, then you don't have a beautiful symphony of health. You have a cacophony of disease. Disease is disharmony in the body. And this is the cause of every chronic disease in the world, mental and physical. Because good health is harmony, illness is disharmony, and because your body is a microbial community. Okay.
Beautiful. I loved I loved the explanation. I love so many things that you said. I also used to say that I thought I would teach my son everything there was to learn, and in fact, it was the other way around. He has been my greatest teacher as well. Um, to clarify, you say what causes autism is what causes every chronic disease, that it's caused by the same things. What would you say the causes are for somebody who's just hearing about GAPS for the first time today?
Before I talk about the health of a child in my clinic, I always talk about the health of the parents, siblings,
Mhm.
grandparents in the family, and a typical scenario has emerged out of all that data that grandparents who were born maybe before in the 1930s or 40s or 50s, they received perfectly healthy gut flora from their parents because your body is a microbial community. There's microbes everywhere, but the center of this microbial community, the heart of it, is in your digestive system, and it's called gut flora. And it's a very complex microbial community. That's where all the government is. That's where all the generals, admirals, commanding echelons are of your whole overall microbial community, of your body, of your microbiome. And these microbes communicate with each other. And they communicate on such a level that their communication is instant. That's what biophysics latest research is telling us. So the parents, mommy and daddy, pass their gut flora to the child. The mother starts passing her microbiome to the child during 9 months of development in utero. So as the body of the baby evolves and grows, it gets populated by the microbial community because the placenta of the mother is populated by microbes. The waters inside her womb, her blood carries microbes. Microbes are everywhere. So the baby already is building its microbiome. But when the baby is ready to be born and it goes through the birth canal, if it's a natural birth, the baby swallows lots of microbes in the birth canal of the mother. Where does that microbial community come from? It comes from the mother's bowel because it's all closed there. And if she has abnormal gut flora, she will have abnormal flora in her birth canal. And that's what the baby would get. The second source is the father, because if he has abnormal gut flora, that flora populates his groin and all the organs in that area, and he shares that flora with the mother on a regular basis. That's how Mother Nature designed it, that both parents, the mother and the father, pass their microbial flora to the baby at the moment of birth. So let's come back to those grandparents. If they were born before the Second World War, imagine the whole planet was organic. There was just food. There was no organic food or non-organic food. There was just food. The whole humanity grew food organically. The soils were healthy. There were no antibiotics because antibiotics kill a proportion of your microbial community in your body, leaving chaos in their wake. Because no antibiotic can kill everything. They only can kill what they're able to kill. And not even kill, but just force these microbes to change. So what's left in that microbial community then gets out of control. You get cacophony, you get disbalance, disharmony. Because in any microbial community, every microbe should be present. They all control each other, they all eat each other, and as a result, the whole overall harmony is maintained. They don't allow any one member of their community to get out of control and start causing trouble. Antibiotics remove a portion of that microbial community, and suddenly what's left is not controlled anymore. It overgrows, it produces babies, and as a result, the balance is broken, the harmony is broken. And your microbial community, which was maintaining your health before then, suddenly becomes your worst enemy. They start digesting food in the wrong way, converting it into millions of poisons, which absorb, which go all over your body, causing disease. But let's come back to those grandparents again. So the grandparents who were born on that kind of planet before the Second World War, they acquired healthy, harmonious gut flora from their parents, the way it was in humanity for eons. There were no antibiotics to destroy their gut flora. There were no agricultural chemicals. There were no vaccinations to interfere in their health. So they all went through their childhood infections, because childhood infections are essential for the baby to develop normal immune system and to develop the right microbiome. Because every infection, every childhood infection is specifically designed by the grand creator, measles, mumps, rubella, scarlet fever, and so on. They're all specifically designed to tweak something in your microbial community in order to adapt you to this environment on the planet so you can live here and be healthy. People who went through their childhood infections in their childhood are practically not known to ever develop cancer, autoimmunity, or allergy, because their immune system got properly developed, properly matured. So if those grandparents received that kind of gut flora, but then antibiotics were invented during the 40s, and they came out onto the market in the 50s. Then after the war, modern agriculture got developed on the planet with all the chemicals. So people started growing food with poisons, using poisons. Vaccinations came onto the market, junk food came onto the market. So by the time that generation of people, having acquired healthy immune system and healthy microbiome from their parents, might have had a couple of courses of antibiotics, started eating junk food, started getting vaccinated, and so on. So by the time they gave birth to their children, their microbiome was a little bit damaged. It didn't show yet drastically in any way, but it was not the same microbiome that they'd received from their parents. And then their children grew up in a very different world. They grew up in a world where antibiotics were given to them throughout their childhood for every cough and sneeze. That was the norm. Where they were vaccinated with all kinds of vaccinations. They didn't go through the childhood infections. They grew up on junk food. The ladies in that generation were put on a contraceptive pill at quite a young age. And the contraceptive pill destroys your microbiome. It destroys the function of your whole body because it acts on your hormones. And hormones are extremely powerful molecules. They affect every cell in the body, every system, every organ. Messing up with hormones is really not clever, really not a good idea. So lots of influences for this generation of people they grew up with. So by the time they got old enough to have their own first baby, their microbial community in the gut and everywhere else was seriously damaged. Far more damaged than what they got from their parents. And when they passed this kind of microbiome to their child, we started getting autism, we started getting ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, diabetes type 1 is now an epidemic amongst our babies. When I trained as a medical doctor, the youngest person we ever diagnosed with diabetes type 1 was an 18-year-old. Even that was considered to be too young. Now we're diagnosing babies a few weeks old with diabetes type 1. Now we have juvenile arthritis. Arthritis was only seen in elderly people, not in babies, not in toddlers, not in small children. And allergies are rampant, eczema is rampant, hay fever, asthma, eczema, learning disabilities, all kinds of problems, all kinds of illnesses in the children. And with every generation, every year, this situation is getting worse. It's getting deeper and deeper. And in the 90s, we had glyphosate coming onto the market. That's the active ingredient in Roundup herbicide, which all our farmers are using with glee because it kills weeds. But glyphosate, when it was first invented, it was patented as a broad spectrum antibiotic. So now every commodity crop is sprayed with this antibiotic several times and during the growing season, and it's being sprayed right at the end before harvesting because glyphosate desiccates the crop. It's easy to collect, easy to harvest. So every piece of bread you eat, every bowl of pasta you eat, every breakfast cereal, every biscuit, every cracker, every sweet, anything that contains sugar, potatoes, wheat, barley, oats, rice, maize, vegetable oils are absolutely soaked in glyphosate. You are eating antibiotics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You are constantly destroying the balance, the harmony in your microbial community, in your body. And as we started getting these influences, this glyphosate and antibiotics that people were getting from doctors, and plus all the other modern influences, because all of them are getting more and more intense in the technocratic society, autism epidemic began, and it's getting worse and worse. When my son was born, at that time, that epidemic was just beginning. Before then, before his birth, we were diagnosing one child in 10,000 with autism all over the world. Today, in Anglo-Saxon countries, in some areas, we are diagnosing 1 in 15. If that's not an epidemic from 10,000 to 15, then I don't know what is. And it's relentless. It's not stopping. It's increasing.
Heartbreaking.
It's
It's
increasing.
heartbreaking.
It's absolutely tragic. Absolutely tragic. So every young person needs to know about GAPS. Everybody needs to know about it, because you don't have to fall prey to this avalanche coming on humanity. Practically everybody in the Western world is a GAPster. A GAPster is a person with damaged microbiome, damaged gut flora. So you as a parent invariably will pass that damaged flora to your child. And your child will develop an illness, either mental illness or physical or both. So that's the cause of autism. So what happens when a child acquires abnormal gut flora from day one of its life? Food gets digested by these microbes in the gut. This abnormal, unbalanced, disharmonious gut flora, where usually fungi overproliferate, certain bacteria overproliferate, which shouldn't be there, viruses and all kinds of other things. They start digesting food in their own way, converting it into millions of poisonous chemicals. At the same time, they damage the integrity of the gut lining. It becomes porous, leaky, holes develop in the gut wall. And all these poisons absorb. They get into the blood, into the lymph of the person, and the blood carries them to the brain. When they get into the brain, they clog the brain with toxicity. From my point of view and from my clinical experience, vast majority of autistic children of today were born with a perfectly normal brain. These were perfectly normal babies. But they developed abnormal gut flora, and that gut flora poisoned them. When the brain of a child is clogged with toxicity, the child cannot develop appropriately. These toxins interfere. How do babies develop? How do they learn about the world? You know, if you observe a baby, they listen to everybody, to everything. They look at everybody. They have this shameless baby stare. They're figuring you out. You know, they're looking at you. They touch everything. They take everything into their mouth. What are they doing? They're using their sensory organs, their hearing, their vision, their sense of smell, their tactile sensitivity, their taste, to collect information from the environment. And then that information is passed to the brain to be processed. And from that processing, the baby learns that this is mommy, this is daddy, I can trust them. This is a toy, I play with it like this. This is food, I eat it. I copy my siblings or I copy other children around. But if the brain of the baby or a toddler is clogged with toxicity, it cannot process that sensory information. All that information coming from ears, eyes, tactile sensitivity, taste buds, the nose, turns into a mush, into a noise in the child's brain, and as a result, the brain cannot use it appropriately. As a result, the child is not developing like a human being should develop. The child develops either autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, mutism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADD without hyperactivity, and so on. The list of disorders now is quite long already, diagnostic labels, and it's growing all the time, because the real diagnosis is GAPS. And because every human being is unique, every child is unique, they all have unique gut flora, this mixture of toxins coming to the brain will be unique. And it will cause unique mixture of symptoms. And very often these children don't fit into any diagnostic box. They don't fit into autism, they don't fit into ADHD or anything else, because they have a few symptoms of autism, a few symptoms of dyslexia, a few symptoms of ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder or something else. And none of it fits into any established diagnostic box. That's why pediatricians very often take a long time to give the child a diagnosis. But I tell the parents, don't wait for the diagnostic label, because it's not going to help your child in any possible way. The real diagnosis is GAPS. You know something's wrong with your child as a parent. Through your heart, you know. Start the GAPS
Yeah.
Nutritional Protocol immediately, urgently, today, yesterday. And in a few weeks' time, if the child is young enough, there will be no need for a diagnosis. Your child will start developing.
I love that. I think also receiving a diagnosis can be so harmful in so many ways. As parents I often speak to feel like that's just the way it is. My child has this diagnosis. This is how it's going to be. And I find that doctors, we actually call them hope killers here, are often discouraging things like diet and interventions, at least here in America. And I think that's pretty
All
global
over the
as well.
world, all over the world, yes.
Yeah. And
Because
so,
that's the way the mainstream functions. There is a place for all forms of healing in this world, and there is a place for mainstream medicine. If you get run over by a bus, God forbid, you wouldn't want an ambulance to take you to a nutritionist, right? You
right.
you will need mainstream medicine because they know how to save your life. They know how to put your broken bits together so they heal and they, restore your body. But when it comes to chronic degenerative conditions, a mainstream doctor is not the right person to go to. They are not trained to understand what causes chronic disorders, and they don't know what to do with them. And they are trained, indoctrinated that there is nothing that can be done, that all you can do is control symptoms by lifelong medication. Because they're supposed to sell drugs. That's their main purpose, to sell drugs. That's why with any chronic condition, it is the diet you must change immediately. First and foremost, there is no way of healing from any chronic disease without changing what you eat. Because if you ask any microbiologist what is the most powerful influence on a microbial community in nature, the answer will be food. You change food supply to a microbial community in a dish or in any environment in nature, everything will change within hours. Because microbes produce trillions of babies per hour, very fast. So certain microbes disappear, other microbes appear, and the whole microbial community changes because you've changed food supply. Because human body is a microbial community, food is the most powerful influence on our health. Nothing can come close. You have to change your diet, whether you like it or not, in order to recover from any chronic disease, because your body is a microbial community and you have to change it in order to heal, in order to recover from any illness. And GAPS diet, the central piece of the GAPS nutritional protocol, is designed specifically to bring that balance, to bring that harmony back into your microbial community. So it starts playing that beautiful symphony of good health.
Completely agree. And when I first started my son on the GAPS diet, we followed it for 2 years and he was doing better than ever. And I actually came off of the protocol because I believed it was intended to be a 2 year program at that point in time. But when we came off of the protocol, this was about a decade ago, I didn't follow the proper coming off structure and I just started adding in other things, and actually some of his old behaviors returned. And I do see that a lot with my clients as well. So just wondering, I guess if they can make
Absolutely. What I've
as
understood now, yes, what I've understood now over the years, that the whole humanity should be on GAPS, the
Mhm,
whole humanity. And I will explain to you why, and we should be permanently on this protocol. We should be
mhm,
permanently on this diet. Because I've started working with the human health through the GAPS, and I've been working with it now for more than 20 years, almost 30 years. Because prior to writing my book, obviously, I worked for many years in my clinic to gather the data, gather the experience to write about. So 14 years ago, I became a regenerative farmer. Because working with food, you realize that you can't trust anyone to produce your food. You have to produce it yourself in order to have proper quality. So 14 years ago, we acquired a piece of very damaged land in the UK here in East Anglia. And in 14 years, we've transformed it into a paradise, which produces so much food, your problem becomes actually to consume it all. It's amazing how a small plot of land can give you such an abundance. That is our birthright, actually, to live in abundance. The modern industrial agriculture is specifically designed to create scarcity and hunger, and to damage land to such a degree that it can hardly produce any food at all. When you start doing things properly, using regenerative, organic, proper regenerative agriculture, the land becomes amazingly abundant. It starts producing enormous amounts of food, small plots of land. And that's how it's supposed to be. That's how a planet is supposed to be. And having worked for 14 years with the land, with the soil, with the animals, with birds, with bees, with plants, with the gardens, with the soil, I've realized that GAPS is for our planet too, because it's GAPS that heals the land, and it's GAPS that heals the whole planet. And I will explain why. The major and the number one and the most destructive activity of humanity on our planet is arable agriculture. I've written a book, which I've just completed, about farming, and it's coming out this autumn. Hopefully it'll be in print in September. And that's what I explain in that book. About half of our planet is already a desert, dry lands on our planet. And every desert is growing rapidly at such a pace that we have 25, maximum 30 years before the whole planet will become a desert. How are those deserts created? Where did all the deserts come from? Looking at history of humanity, you realize that they were all created by growing wheat, barley, sugar beet, sugar cane, oily seeds, and potatoes. Commodity crops. Because because soil on our planet has been created over millions of years by huge herds of herbivorous animals. Deer, bison, cows, goats, sheep, African herbivorous animals, wildebeest and zebra and so on. As they graze correctly, not the way people graze, the way Mother Nature grazes them, they create topsoil. They have covered our planet with thick topsoil. Topsoil on our planet is alive. It's a living matrix. It's a microbial community. And your gut has got its own soil. If you look at the human gut lining under the microscope and take a picture, and then look at the soil on your field, on a healthy soil, the pictures are almost identical. The gut flora that lines your gut lining is the soil inside your digestive system. And the roots of your health are sitting in that soil. So soil is a microbial community. It's living. It cannot be disturbed. It's very complex. It has a very complex structure. Every time we dig it, plow it, till it, we destroy that complex structure. We cannot plow soil. We cannot dig soil. It gets destroyed. It turns from this living matrix, a living microbial community, it turns into dead dirt, what people call dirt or dust. And the rivers and the rains wash this dead dirt off the fields into the waterways, or if it's dry, the winds lift it and take it away as dust. And as a result, the soil gets degraded and the area turns into desert. This is how every desert on our planet has been created. And now, since humanity has discovered crude oil and learned how to build big machines and fuel those machines and create all those chemicals, we now have plowed every nook and cranny on the planet. We're producing colossal amounts of commodity crops. And we are destroying the soil at an unprecedented speed. That is why our planet is heading very rapidly to being, the whole planet is going to be a desert. Our children will have no planet to live on. What is GAPS? GAPS is a protocol where we're not only healing your body, but we do not consume commodity crops. We completely push them away, aside. We do not consume wheat, barley, rice, oats, maize, potatoes, oily seeds, sugar, and all the crops that make sugar, and all sorts of other commodity crops. We do not consume them because they are the cause of every chronic disease on the planet. As a medical doctor who worked with food now for 40 years, I will tell you that in order to recover from any chronic disease, you must remove commodity crops out of your diet permanently. No more bread, no more anything made from flour, no rice, no maize, no sugar, no oily seeds, no vegetable oils, no potatoes, none of those things. But the problem is, you see, these substances, we now have a lot of research, plenty of research to show us that these substances, these commodity crops, these plants are addictive. They have powerful addictive chemicals in them. The most addictive substance on the planet is sugar. The whole humanity is a drug addict, addicted to commodity crops. That is why people love French fries. They love croissants and baguettes and bagels and bread and pasta and sugar, 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 sweets and sweet drinks and the rest of it. Because the whole humanity is a drug addict. There are many mechanisms of this addiction. One of the major mechanisms is the way your gut flora functions when it gets that commodity crop to eat. Every time you eat anything made out of flour, sugar, vegetable oils, potatoes, your pathogenic microbes in the gut have a feast. And they're clever, they convert those substances into many poisons, but part of that toxicity they make in the form of endorphins and morphins, which absorb, get into your brain, and turn your brain into an addict. And your brain then dictates to you, I love chocolate muffins. I love pasta. I love bread. I love sandwiches. I love baguettes. I love croissants. I can't live without these things. That's addiction. The whole humanity is addicted. And through arable agriculture, addicted humanity is destroying the planet Earth rapidly. We have to stop. We have to realize this. If we want our children to have a planet to live on, we have to take action right now. So GAPS will not only save humanity, it not only makes everybody healthy and well, it heals the land and it will heal the whole planet.
I love it. I can't be more grateful to you for sharing this message. And I know it saved my son's life, and I've seen it go on to save hundreds of children's lives that I've worked with over the past decade. Sometimes I get clients. I recently got a client whose children are very severe. She has twins. They're in their 30s, and she wants to heal them, but she tells me they need carbs. What do you say to somebody that has that belief?
They don't need carbs, they're just addicted. They're addicted to these carbohydrates. What they need is more fat. More fat. And the vegetables can provide plenty of carbohydrates. And honey that we consume provides carbohydrates, and particularly cooked vegetables, and fruit when it's allowed, when the person is well enough to start eating fruit. That will provide plenty of carbohydrates. Human body doesn't need carbohydrates. We have our technocratic sciences, nutritional science, which turns everything upside down and tells you that you need to live on carbohydrates, that proteins are dangerous, fats are dangerous. We all should just gorge on carbohydrates. That's why we have such epidemics of obesity and heart disease and cancer and allergies and autoimmunity and so on, because people follow this advice, and carbohydrates are addictive. The truth is the opposite. Human body cannot live without proteins, animal proteins, and animal fats, but it can perfectly well live without carbohydrates. And I will tell you more. Some 15 years ago, I was contacted by a group of mothers who were breastfeeding their babies, who had breastfed babies, exclusively breastfed, vomiting, diarrhea, the child is losing weight, not gaining weight as the baby should every day. They were losing weight. They were literally dying, these babies. Doctors did testing and they found that the child is allergic to all proteins on the planet. So the parents were told, you just can give him, stop breastfeeding because it's got protein in it. We put you on a soya formula, which has been specifically processed to break down proteins. And these children were not doing well on this formula at all. So I knew by then, through my clinical experience, that plant foods, are difficult to digest for a human digestive system. And the more that digestive system is damaged, the less this person is able to tolerate plant matter. And that is, what are plants? Grains, beans, nuts, seeds, vegetables, fruit, things like that, seeds. So I try to put these babies on the first stage of the introduction diet, of the GAPS introduction diet, which is the gentlest, which provides the most gentle nourishment, the most non-irritating nourishment for the gut. It wasn't gentle enough for these babies. So the next step was to remove all plants. And that's when we started getting results. Diarrhea stopped, vomiting stopped, children started gaining weight, started growing, started developing. These children now are teenagers, and they're doing very well, bushy-tailed, bright-eyed, no disabilities, no problems in these children, not at all. And there are many, many more that followed in their stead. But what we found very difficult for these youngsters is to introduce any kind of plant matter into their diet. They lived entirely on animal foods, on meat stock, on meats, fish, eggs, and fermented dairy. Not a leaf, not a speck out of plant kingdom was consumed for years. But every time we tried to introduce a tiny bit of vegetable into their diet, in many of these children, diarrhea would return, vomiting would return. So these children taught me that human beings can live perfectly well on animal foods only. We do not need to eat plants at all. We don't need 5 a day, or 7 a day, or 15 a day, whatever the latest figure is from our mainstream. We don't need vegetables, we don't need fruit, we don't need any fiber or any of it. We can live perfectly well entirely on animal foods. And I explain all of that in my book called Don't Be a Vegetarian, which has been around for a while now. I explained how the animal foods work in the human body and how the plant foods. I actually explain it in all of my books, how it works. So the upshot of it, and that is life lessons. This is a clinical experience. I haven't got this information from any book. This is experience with my patients, with my clinic, that human beings do not need to eat plants. And the more the digestive system is damaged, the more the person should avoid plant matter, particularly commodity crops. So that demonstrates to us that the mainstream propaganda, the mainstream conditioning that you need to eat fruit and vegetables, carbohydrates, turn it upside down and you will see the truth. The most important foods for human health that build your body, heal your body, restore it after any illness, and remove any illness, any chronic illness, are meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. And plants, we need to be careful with them. Commodity crops in particular, these are complex carbohydrates, which are very, very difficult to digest for a human digestive system, particularly for a damaged digestive system. And the vast majority of people cannot even tolerate them. They just don't realize it. As any normal drug addict or an alcoholic, people are in denial. They know on some level that bread makes them ill, and yet they can't stop.
Mhm. I've had an incredible success teaching this protocol to other families over the past decade, but one thing I come across pretty often is that many parents will attempt the protocol on their own and become worried when their child seems to worsen initially. And sometimes they describe regression like symptoms, increased behaviors, fatigue, loss of skills. They wonder if it's detoxification or a microbial die-off or a sign that something's wrong. How do you safely navigate or minimize these reactions, particularly in children or adult children with severe autism?
When you start the GAPS Nutritional Protocol, you go through a stage of die-off. Why die off? Because your microbial community is pathogenic, or your patient's microbial community is pathogenic. It's dominated by pathogenic species of microbes. And when we deprive them of their beloved food, of their beloved sugar and flour and other commodity crop potatoes and starch, complex carbohydrates, they start dying. And as they die, they release toxins. And it's these toxins that caused your disease in the first place. So the symptoms of your disease may temporarily get worse. It always, you will always feel worse initially before you start getting better. It's important to understand that, and it's important to go through that period. And we have ways of controlling the severity of this die-off in the GAPS Nutritional Protocol. That is why GAPS Nutritional Protocol looks simple on the outside. But when you start following it, there are a lot of intricate details to it. That is why I train certified GAPS practitioners and certified GAPS coaches. They go through a training course and they become professionals, and they guide people through these difficult periods of time. And the more severe the disease is, the illness is, the longer it takes to recover, and the more pronounced the die-off reaction might be. But everybody goes through it. It's important to go through it.
Some people believe that the rise in chronic illness, declining fertility, and increasing rates of autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders are simply unintended consequences of modern life, while others believe these trends are deliberate, reflect deliberate actions and broader agendas. What is your opinion on that?
Well, whether it's deliberate or not deliberate, the important thing is that it's down to you, down to your choice. You can choose to recover. No matter how you got ill, what happened in the past, you just have to forgive the past and get on with it. Roll up your sleeves, start cooking, read my books, gather all the information. And we are working now on creating an online. I have a group of people who are working with me now, beautiful people. And you are one of these people, Lindsay. So we are working on creating an online community, a global community of people who are following the GAPS Nutritional Protocol. It will be Almighty Networks on an online community where people will be able to join and support each other and help each other and have professional supervision in there. I will have new information and your questions will be answered there. And this online community will be supported by local communities. We're going to set up thousands of local communities all over the world where people can actually meet face to face and cook together and be in one kitchen and discuss things. And most importantly, find all the local farms and local food suppliers, which can provide us with proper quality food. The farmers will be involved in these local communities as well, because we'll be providing them with customers and they'll be providing us with good food. So that's how it's going to work. So I'm working very hard at the moment on creating this support, on creating this network, this community online. And if any of you has skills to help us with this project, because I'm working with a group of volunteers, beautiful people who have volunteered to help me with this. If you have skills in online platforms or technical skills or marketing skills or legal skills, if you're a lawyer and you can help us with that, and if you have skills with financing or any other skills, we'll be delighted to welcome you into our volunteer community if you would like to help us with this project.
Beautiful. I have a few more questions for you if you have time. Is there anyone who is beyond help, or does the GAPS Nutritional Protocol work for everyone? Is there anyone that it's not suited for?
There is nobody in this world beyond help. I don't believe in hopeless situations. Everybody's got help. There are situations where you may not recover fully, 100%, like, for example, a child with Down syndrome. I have many Down syndrome children who are living permanently on the GAPS Nutritional Protocol. Because children with Down syndrome, they have a genetic disorder, and it affects them mentally and physically. Many of them are physically ill, very ill, not only have mental problems. But on the GAPS Nutritional Protocol, they become physically well. They feel well. They're happy. They function well. They learn, they're far more capable, and many of them are now even holding jobs. Children that have been with me now for 20 years or so, they're holding jobs. They're having full, beautiful lives, fulfilling lives. They function at the maximum of their ability. Of course, Down syndrome is not going to disappear. Of course, they will still have this condition, but they can have a happy, healthy, productive life. That's what can happen with everybody. You may not recover 100%, but at the end of the day, the body is a tool that you use for a period of time of a human life from birth till death. At death, you will drop that body like a ton of bricks, and as long as it functions, as long as it works for you and allows you as a spiritual being to be creative and to have a fulfilling life and joyful life, then what else do we desire? And the GAPS Nutritional Protocol will give that opportunity to everybody.
From your perspective, what is the single biggest mistake families make when implementing the GAPS Nutritional Protocol?
They get afraid of the die-off in the initial stages, and they run away, and they step back, and they convince themselves, well, there's nothing we can do, and start controlling symptoms. And that's not the road. That's a cul-de-sac that you're turning off. You're turning left. And there will be a lot of suffering, a lot of problems, and no future. Once you own GAPS, that's why we're building this community, so people give each other support, give each other moral support and emotional support. And when you meet other families who have been there, had this die-off syndrome, had these difficulties, were there, but they pushed through, they can be immensely helpful to a family who is just starting. And I understand, parents with children who are ill very often are exhausted themselves. They're not feeling well themselves. They haven't slept for years properly. And the mother and the father usually have physical problems themselves and mental problems quite often too. So it is difficult. It's very, very difficult. But the growth, the spiritual growth that you will go through, the person within you that will go, at the end of it, you will become so much stronger, so much clearer, so much more effective in your life. You will become a very different human being and will function on a very high level, on a much higher level than before. That's why you got this child, because GAPS is spiritual. Every illness, every chronic illness is spiritual. This illness is given to you by your spirit so that to force you to grow, to force you out of your comfort zone. Because human beings are lazy. If it ain't broke, why fix it? Why change anything if I'm comfortable? I'm not going to change. It's through discomfort, through adversity, that we are pushed to grow spiritually, to evolve, to learn new things, to struggle, to improve, to become better, kinder, clearer, better human beings overall. That's what the disease is created for, and it's spiritual. Every chronic disease is spiritual. That's what its purpose is.
I love that you say that. This has been an incredibly spiritual journey for me as well. And I've had so much success helping parents of extremely picky eaters on this protocol. I recently had a parent send me a message saying, Lindsay, if you told me my daughter would be eating zucchini noodles and lamb meatballs on day 2, I wouldn't have believed you. We thought she was going to starve. And that is one of the biggest reasons I see parents not start the nutritional protocol, is they say that their children will not eat these foods. What practical strategies have you found most successful, or what would you say to those parents to encourage them to begin?
Absolutely. Remember, I mentioned to you that the whole humanity is addicted to sugar and commodity crops. Your child is an addict. Your child's addicted to the foods that make him or her ill, to the absolute poisons that make him or her ill. And it's your job to pull this child out of that vicious cycle of addiction. And your child's going to fight you every step on the way. You're dealing with a drug addict. If any of you read books or watched films about how, people try to heal drug addicts, they will smile you in the face and agree and nod their head. But as soon as you turn your back on them, They'll sabotage everything you do. And that's what these children try to do as well. I had children, autistic children, who went into fasting for 2 weeks, already underweight. Parents were afraid to tell anybody for the fear that the child will be taken away from them. And then the child asked for soup. Just make sure that the child drinks. Fasting is good for a period of time. Don't worry if your child is not eating anything. Just don't break and don't give in. In my yellow book, there is a chapter which explains what to do and how to do this. And we have courses and we have a lot of materials on my websites, how to pull a picky eater out of that vicious cycle of addiction and dependency on the foods that hurt them, that harm them. If the child goes into fasting, if the child eats nothing, just make sure that the child's hydrated, keeps drinking water, and don't worry about it. Once the child's out of that addiction, once the body has cleansed, he will ask for soup. And that's what we want them to eat. We want them to have meat stock. That's the most healing staple in the GAPS diet. Properly prepared meat stock that you make at home. Keep offering it every hour, every 2 hours, until the child eventually will have it. But in that chapter in the yellow book, which is called It's Feeding Time or No, I give you a structure which is based on applied behavior analysis, how to pull a picky eater out of that vicious cycle. And it works every time. If the parents do it properly, if they have resolve, and if they stand strong as a family, it's important that the whole family participates and the whole family is united on this issue. Because you don't want moms trying to get the child to eat the right food while grandma is trying to bring a chocolate cake or something into the house and other members of the family are interfering. The whole family needs to be united and the whole family needs to work on this. We had very picky eaters in my clinic. I had autistic children that lived on one brand cracker, would not eat anything else. One particular brand. Going through this procedure, he was eating everything. Lamb chops, soup, liver, vegetables, eggs, everything.
I love it. Have you made any significant changes or refinements to the protocol since you very first introduced it?
No, the introduction diet is the same. The full GAPS diet is the same. But in the blue book, I've added 3 more varieties. The no plant GAPS diet based on that experience that I've described to you. And the ketogenic diet for cancer patients and some other severe situations and some other varieties. But those are rare. Those are specific for rare, severe situations. For the vast majority of people, the GAPS introduction diet and the full GAPS diet are enough.
Beautiful. If someone is not experiencing the improvements they're hoping for, what do you consider the most common reasons for that to be? What would you investigate next?
There are lots of aspects. Please read my blue book. There are lots of mistakes that people can make and create barriers for themselves. That is why having a community would be very helpful. Speaking to other people who are on the same boat, who have been through what you're going through right now. And in that community online, we're going to have 3 parts to it. There will be a first part, which will be called a welcome garden, where people who never heard of GAPS or who are still searching, what to do with their illness or their child's illness, can come in and get some information. The next one, the middle, will be called GAPS Village, which will be the community, global community, where you will meet lots of people from all over the world who are on different stages of their GAPS journey. And there will be farmers there, and there will be people there who are not doing GAPS, who just like you, only just came in and they're considering it, they're learning. But then a third space will be called the Guided Care Center, where we're going to have certified GAPS practitioners and certified GAPS coaches on duty. We will vet them. They will be the most experienced ones in there. So that will be like entering a hospital or entering a health spa where you run the care. They will give you advice every day, every hour if need to, on a daily basis when you're going through a difficult stage. When your child or yourself, you're going through a die-off, detox, something's happening, you're not quite sure why am I not improving, what's going on here, what's going on here, you'll get some professional supervision there at a very affordable price. Because we have lots of practitioners and coaches around the world, they do consultations, but quite often it's expensive for people to have a consultation. And also between the consultations, there may be a few months or a few weeks. While at that stage, many people need daily guidance. They need somebody to be by their side every day. And that's what that part of the community will be about. And once the person is through that difficult period, they can step back into the village. They don't have to be in the care center all the time. They can step back into the village in the community, which will be buzzing and bustling and which will give them emotional support and lots of advice too, and lots of new information.
I love it. I'm so excited about everything you're building and how many people are healing thanks to your protocol. I have found that one thing that is often overlooked is the home environment. I find that often, if the child is not making rapid progress, they do tend to possibly have an ongoing exposure through the home. Here, there's pretty much a toxic version and a healthy version of everything, sunscreen, shampoos, lotions, toothpaste, cookware. Um,
Absolutely. GAPS is
there's
not just a diet, it's a whole change in lifestyle and life outlook. You're changing and changing of you. By the time you've been through it, year or two, you will look back at yourself, what you were 2 years ago, and think, oh, poor you. You will know so much more. You will be so much wiser and so much higher spiritually. You would never want to go back there.
I also think that our beliefs and our emotions, especially the parents' emotions and even the words that we use, play a large role. And I find that all of it needs to be in alignment for optimal results.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a lifestyle change. It's a
If,
profound transformation.
if you could
That's what
change one,
that's what happens. Yeah.
yeah, if you could change one thing about modern healthcare, what would it be?
Hard to say. The whole thing is wrong.
Get rid of it all. Um, and for my very last question, would you share with our viewers your recommendations regarding vaccinations?
Knowing everything we know now about the politics of this activity and who's behind it, the kind of people that are now own those companies and the kind of people that promote them, and particularly what we've learned during the COVID years and all the information we learned afterwards, what really went on and what really happened in that period of time. I don't recommend anybody to ever even consider such an intervention, particularly for a child. And now we have a number of studies. A few years ago, when I paid attention to this, there were 20 studies that were conducted by independent researchers, usually volunteers at their own expense, where they took a group of completely unvaccinated children and compared them with vaccinated. And every study has demonstrated 100% that unvaccinated children are way healthier, overall healthier in every possible way than vaccinated children. And that speaks for itself. Now we have more and more studies like that coming out.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you so much for your time today, for your humility, your transparency, your willingness to continue learning, growing, and sharing your knowledge so generously. It's rare to find someone with your depth of expertise who remains so open-minded and genuinely committed to helping others. On behalf of myself and everyone watching, thank you for spending this time with us today and for dedicating your life to asking these questions that many others weren't asking, and for giving hope to families all around the world. Your work
Thank you very
profoundly
much.
the course of my own family's life, and because of that, it's gone to impact the lives of countless other families through the work I now have the privilege of doing. I will always be grateful for the path you helped create. And I know everyone watching has learned something valuable today. I hope this conversation encourages people to continue asking questions, learning, and believing in the body's incredible ability to heal. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Natasha's work, we'll include links below for her books, her practitioner training, and other resources. Thank you all for joining us today. If you found this interview encouraging or informative, please consider sharing it with someone who could benefit from hearing this conversation. Dr. Natasha, thank you again. It has truly been an honor.
And thank you very much for your work, Lindsay. Thank you for spreading the word and helping so many people, so many families.